Okay, it's 1:30 Pacific Standard, and we're going to get ready to launch this webinar on slips, trips, and falls. And my name is Cole Craven, and I'm the safety director at TPM. And as with any of the the webinars that I do for the accounts, if you need these materials or you have questions about specific instances that you'd like to talk to me about, feel free to give me a call or email me. My contact information will be on the last slide. But before we get into too much of this, let's just go over some controls. And so up in your upper right-hand corner, you should have a little arrow and orange tab. That's your grab tab. Then you've got your mute and unmute for the microphone. I had to mute everybody because we've got a couple people that called in, and when we do that, we get kind of a weird reverb. And so everybody's muted. We got the webcam and the hand raise button, but really the best way to do this is the chat screen. If you want to talk to me or talk to anybody else in the group during the webinar. So you type in your message, you pick who it goes to, and then you send it. So you can send a message to everybody. You can send a message to just me. You can send a message to another attendee. So if you have something you want to ask or need to ask during the webinar, that's where we do it. And at the end, you'll have my contact information. So you can get into specifics, or if you got a location you need me to come check out, I'm happy to do it. Also in there on your controls, you should have a tab called materials. And the materials that I've got attached, there's 5 attachments. 2 of them are actual audit checklists. One's just kind of a simple audit checklist. Another one is it's a much more broad, expansive one. There is this presentation. I'm attaching this PowerPoint as well. And then there's just a couple, informational little things that put together. So there's good materials with this. And if you can't get them off that materials tab and save them, just email me at the end and I'll send you everything. Send it to you directly. So this was actually, I was surprised that I got so many requests for this one. And well, people were requesting it quite a bit, but for 2 different reasons. So slips, trips, and falls, with most of the accounts, the vast majority, that's going to be their most common workers' comp claim. And for a lot of them, it's also their most expensive as far as the class of this injury. So these are generally, on the average, very pricey workers' comp claims. And we all are having them. It's probably everyone's most common workers' comp injury. And then the other reason that this has been requested, and that's how I'm trying to kind of script this, is people wanted training or something to train their safety committees with or train their managers with. And so that's why I included this PowerPoint, and you can take it and cut stuff out of it, but I kind of scripted it or put it to what managers or your safety committee would be looking at, and how we're going to train those folks to help us deal with this. So we're going to identify what they are, why they're important. We're going to look at how they happen. I'm going to show you a whole bunch of pictures, and we're going to identify hazards. And then we're going to talk about how do we prevent them? How do we stop these things from happening? Because that's what all of us, I'm sure, really want to know, is how do we stop these from happening? So first thing we're going to identify, we got 3 different types of causation here. You've got slips and trips, tripping over a cord, slip on ice, slipping on the wet floor, tripping over an airline. And that's the most common of the type of injury, of the type of incidents, is the slips and trips. They generally be a high frequency, tend to be a lower dollar amount. When we get to the falls, those tend to be a lower frequency, but they're much higher dollar amount. And if we're going to have a fatality, it's almost certainly going to come from a fall. And that, falls, or we could fall off of a loading dock, or we could fall off of a ladder, or we could fall off the top of a dust collection bin. And so this is a pretty broad group of topics, but a lot of the same things apply. And so now I had the definitions in there. I'll back that up. So I didn't realize I'd put animation on those for the definitions. So the falls, you've got two types. You got falls from the same level. That'd be basically your slips or trips, or you got a fall from elevation, and that's generally when we have somebody really get permanently injured or die. And unfortunately, in our industry, just amongst my accounts, of the couple hundred accounts that I work with, we average about 3, maybe 4 a year, fatalities from a fall from elevation. And so it's something that we're seeing every single year, we have the worst case scenario. But the reason why these are important, why these types of injuries are important, it's the most severe non-fatal workplace accident. Severity wise, it's the most severe of the injury types. We spend in the United States $62 billion in workers' comp annually just on slips, trips, and falls. So countrywide, we spend over $1 billion a week on slips, trips, and falls incidents. At work, it's your second leading cause of death. And when you take all the slips, trips, and falls accidents and workers' comp claims and put them in a bucket, the average claim is $40,000 per incident. And then it's, as far as all of the workplace accidents that we have, 20% of them are slips, trips, and falls. So, there's a lot of reasons why this is important. And we get people get killed. We're going to have huge dollars associated with any types of these incidents, and they happen way too frequently. And there's another reason I didn't put on here that is why it's important. It is the most cited, it's the most cited OSHA violation. It goes into fall protection, just general requirement. So it's number 1. And then last year it was number 9 as well too. So 2 of the 10 are the most written OSHA citations are slips, trips, and falls, or fall prevention. So that's the other reason why it's important too, is you can pretty much guarantee OSHA is going to come to look at this when and if they audit us. So how do they happen? And we're going to talk about, there's going to be a lot of pictures through this of pictures of my accounts, and then pictures from folks that are not my accounts. But I started breaking down why in our industry, why are these things happening? And it being dirty or disorganized, or there's product or broken boards or strapping, or just the dirty and disorganized, no question is one of the most common causes. And also fairly common cause on this, and it's not the entire reason. These are all things you're going to have multiple ones of these. If you're going to have 2, 3, 4, 5 different things that were part of why it happened. Bad lighting is commonly one of the factors. Not having training or having bad training is almost always a factor. And the reason why I say that is most companies' slips, trips, and fall training is pay more attention. And that's about it. I think one of the bigger reasons is our employees and our safety committees are not empowered or they're not engaged. Most of these things have been sitting there. Those instances where somebody slipped over a rug or somebody twists their ankle on garbage on the ground, it's probably been sitting there for days. With a lot of these, had we just kind of kept things clean, or we had employees who would actually fix something when they found it was wrong, these wouldn't happen. There are definitely bad work practices where we'll work around stuff. We'll be working in line with product and lumber or boxes sitting right around our feet. Occasionally it is bad or broken equipment. With the fall protection stuff, the harnesses and lanyards, that one's pretty common. But I think the biggest one for me, this is from what I have seen and from my experience, it's bad habits. We walk by something, we don't do or say anything. And our employees are going by something that's wrong and they say, no, it's not my problem, or I didn't do it. And so we just leave it. That to me, I think is the number one reason why we're having these. You know, and you've got times when we're using the wrong tool for the job, like we're standing on a bucket instead of using a ladder. And then there's not much we can do about Mother Nature or the weather. You know, we can plan for it and be ready for it, but statistically, that's not even close to your most common reason for having slips, trips, and falls. Yeah, we'll probably all have somebody slip on the ice this coming winter and you know, fall down. I gotta make sure I use a good word on that, but fall down and you know, land on their butt. But then with the fall protection stuff, yeah, hurrying and rushing is part of it. I think it's a small factor. I think it's a huge factor when we talk about falls from elevation, because going back to those bad habits is we'll routinely work on catwalks that are missing a railing or have a broken railing. And so we don't, but we're still not going to put on a harness and a lanyard, or we say that we're going to, oh, this is only going to take a second. And so I'll just go out there without my harness and my lanyard on. So that rushing or hurrying or trying to save time can be fatal when it comes to falls. So that is a factor on that. So this one's super common. I get this one all the time. And I know I don't need to tell you what's wrong here, but those mats are wonderful. I'm not saying get rid of the mats, because they're wonderful. If I'm coming from a wet or icy environment outside, I want that mat there because I want to make sure people's feet aren't wet when they hit the linoleum or hit the concrete floor. But frequently, very frequently, one of those corners will get flipped up or flipped under, and it'll just sit there because, you know, people aren't going to take the time to flip that down. And so what you know, the primary message from this whole thing is culturally, we need everybody's help to work on this. You know, eventually, you know, ultimately, we got to have everybody helping us work on this, or we'll never get it under control. So it is really kind of a culture thing. This, I didn't take the best angle picture from this, but this is going into an account stairwell, and we got a lot wrong here. We're storing stuff, you know, a chair and wood and a cinder block in the stairwell, which is a massive no-no. Can't store anything in your stairwells. But also what concerns me is you can be coming out that door and catch your foot on that cinder block holding the door open, and you would literally be falling face first down those stairs. So there's a lot here that worries me. Yeah, stairs are going to be one of our most common places that we have accidents and injuries. You know, sinkhole was all this was, but it sat like that for quite a long time. And so they were trying to barricade it. You know, I'd recommend, yeah, you put your barricade up, but make it so that people physically cannot walk on that thing. Put a board down or something along those lines until you can get it fixed. So they're doing the awareness thing, but this sat there for months and months. I would have put something over it just because somebody could be walking along, looking at their emails on their phone and step right into that and break an ankle. Ah, yes. Get a lot of these. So this is one of those creative use of ladders that they're painting in a stairwell, and they've got the legs perched on the railing and they're climbing up with that thing leaned against the wall. I see a lot of, we'll call it creative ladder usage. And we do it because we're just like, oh, I'm only going to be up there for a second. Or we do it because our guys, you know, our folks honestly don't know what the right tool for the job would be. And so we'll see things like this a lot, you know, using ladders in a really, really bad idea type of way. Now this I'd be willing to bet we've got a spot at our location that's very, very, very much like this. You know, and this one's particularly bad because you're coming down the stairs, and if you were to step off of that, you've got garbage everywhere around you. And so then what our folks tend to do is jump over the garbage, and then we get people blowing out their knee or you know, tweaking their ankle or slipping and falling on their backside. And so it goes back to kind of a cultural thing. I know that we're going to build up a certain amount, over a period of time, but we need to have some plan to prevent this from just building up like this. And this type of situation, this will stay there for days, weeks. So this isn't something that's happened in 5 minutes. It's just over the course of a day, you deal with stuff, and then the problem is we get accustomed to just walking over the crap. We don't do anything about it until somebody really gets hurt. Or we have somebody come through like me who does an audit and says that looks horrible and we should do something about it. Yeah, this is not one of my accounts, but this picture there's so much going wrong here. The trenching stuff, that's a whole different set of standards and everything. And there's about 12 different trenching standard violations in this, but I don't, I worry about, I do see like on our construction that we'll have people right up against the lip or on that edge, or we'll have people working down in the hole and they're just, I'm only going to be there for just a second. And with this situation, this easily could lead to somebody dying. There's no question. Man, oh man, I hate people standing on pallets to do anything. And that probably happens, amongst my accounts probably once a week, if not more frequently. The using the pallets as a platform, it's just got to stop. It has led to so many fatalities over just doing simple things. Having an employee get killed changing a light bulb. If we need to get up there, get a man basket on your forklift, or get a scissor lift, or get the right piece of equipment to get people up there. And I'll see people standing on 5-gallon buckets or chairs to light bulbs all the time as well too. And once again, it goes back to a cultural thing of how are we going to do it? And 20 people walked by him changing that light and didn't say anything. And the correct ladder was only about 10 feet away from him. But at the same time, we're doing it quick. And then the picture in the middle of the two guys on one ladder just makes me laugh and cringe at the same time. And this one, once again, goes back to, we got one where they're doing another homemade platform using ladders and looks like 2x8s and a bucket. If we need to be working them there for that long, then get some scaffolding, get the right gear, put it up. It's not going to take people all that long to set up scaffolding and take it down. You're talking about a total of, if it's 20 minutes total setup and takedown time, I think that's being really generous. And we have quite frequently people working right on the edge. And I will admit, this is a tough one. With the picture of him standing on the edge of that walkway, what does he tie off to? So, that brings up a whole bunch of questions, but standing there working on that edge, we've got to have a better way of doing it, or the right equipment so he can be up there working and we're not worried about him falling off and breaking his neck. Oh, whoops, I put two of the same pictures in here on this presentation. I apologize. But this is normal. This is almost every mill I go through. This is the standard operating procedure. And I'll be honest, these aren't even bad ones. Comparatively, I see way, 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 way worse. But this is totally normal and totally accepted. So there's many, many, many different slip or trip hazards here. And it goes back to, and I know I'm being a dead horse, but it's a cultural thing. How do we do things? What are we going to tolerate? Our employees, if we want to get rid of or eliminate, if all possible, our slips, trips, and falls hazards, then we've got to make our employees understand that this is unacceptable. And I understand it's like having to clean up after toddlers, but we've got to get everybody involved on whether or not this is acceptable. Once again, super, super common. The picture on the left, they put in all those airline keepers, and they got extension cord keepers, and our folks will take them out and just leave them there. And they'll walk around and work around them all day long. So we tried to put the thing in play, but we still had supervisors and managers walking by and not coiling that thing up or not telling people to coil things up. And so we all just accepted that we're going to walk around and walk over these trip hazards all the time. So in our industry, pulling the workers' comp claims that I could and analyze, where are these incidents happening in our industries? Well, a lot of it's that slipping on trash, debris, cords, lumber, stickers. That would be the most common. And then oddly, we have people fall downstairs, but the vast majority of our injuries on stairs is people falling up the stairs. I genuinely surprised me when I did the analysis on this. That yeah, most of our stair injuries are people falling up stairs. We got people falling off of ladders, and then that fourth one, that's a sleeper. And you look at as our employees get older, our operators, they kind of hit this age where it's the go no go line, where we start getting a lot of injuries on knees, shoulders and hips, of getting out of the cab of trucks, getting out of the log loader, just getting out of the equipment. And they've been doing it for years and years and years. But what happens is we get older, and our body isn't as flexible as it used to be, isn't as tough as it used to be, and all of a sudden somebody will just jump out because they're not taking the steps or the ladder down. They'll just jump out, and they end up getting a really significant injury from that. There's a shocking number of knee and shoulder injuries while we had somebody getting out of a piece of equipment. Obviously, outdoors is a huge one for everybody, and that's everything from ice to snow to mud to tree roots to trenches. And then another kind of a sleeper is a lot of my accounts have just as many slips and trips in the office as they do in their production, in their mill. So they'll have just as many, same number of slips and trips, and granted, they're not as severe, but they'll have the same number in an office of 10 as they do in a mill with 70 employees. So that was kind of a sleeper that doesn't get a lot of attention. And getting into, okay, how do we deal with this? It's organization and tidiness. You got to keep things away from pathways. I love when we have dedicated pathways for people to walk on, and we don't put anything in those pathways. I mean, it's not going to answer every single incident, but it's going to make all that walking through as close to risk-free as we can. And so people are trained. We don't ever put anything in those walkways. I've seen people. Oh, I've tripped over my own cord while I'm doing a classroom because I didn't set it up very intelligently. So I see a lot of trips over cords and space heaters. This winter and fall, I'll start seeing the space heater trips again because we set it right in a pathway and we end up catching the cord with our foot. The stairs got a few different reasons for this. Remembering that most of the time it's people falling up. A lot of the times it's because they're carrying something they can't see where they're putting their feet, or we'll be going up the stairs and we don't use a railing, and so when they fall, they end up falling right on their face or right onto their wrists and hurting themselves that way. Whenever it's possible, just don't carry a load up and down the stairs. If you have to, use a cart. If you're lucky enough to have an elevator and you can send it on that. But a lot of these, when we have people fall on stairs, it's because they were carrying something. Ladders, a lot of the time, if I could just get people to use a ladder instead of the 5-gallon buckets or the chair. We have to train our folks. Our authorized employees have to be trained annually on using and storing and inspecting ladders. So there absolutely is a requirement for our employees that are certified or allowed to use ladders. They got to be trained on them annually. They have to be trained to inspect them monthly, and they have to be trained that they have to be stored properly. So yes, you will have to do ladder safety training for your list of folks who are allowed to use ladders. And we're just doing the 3 points of contact, never stand on the top. It's the general stuff that we've always taught. But now we need to have documented training saying that they've done this training, and that's not a recommendation. That's OSHA standard. You have to do ladder safety training. This is is a big one, and it's kind of a sleeper. We don't pay much attention to this. It's just getting in and out of your equipment. Really, like I said, our folks, you hit a certain age, they get to the late 40s, and all of a sudden we see just a massive increase in shoulder and knee injuries and hip injuries. And so we need to train our people on how to get in and get out, make sure the treads or the ladder rungs are clear, make sure their feet are clean of mud. They're always facing it, 3 points contact just with the ladder. We've got to get people to stop jumping out of cabs of trucks. And they'll get away with it for years. They'll go injury-free for years and years and years. But after they've been doing it for 20 years, they're going to jump out and you're going to have a back injury claim that's never going to go away. So same thing, 3 points contact, climb up it and climb down it. We got to get people to quit jumping out of the cabs of trucks. That one's a really, really common one. Outdoors, it could be any number of things. It could be gravel, it could be mud, it could be a garden hose, it could be a pothole. And so what we've got to do with that is one, we've got to have a plan for it. Designated walkways are great with this, because then we only have to focus on maintaining a certain area, but it might be sand and ice melt for icy or snowy times. It might be, we may have to put down like planks to walk across a muddy or a gravelly area. Sometimes people twist their ankles. We've got to find some way to increase awareness and then make a safe path or a safer path for people to get by those hazards or those dangers, because those are going to be all over the place. That's why the footwear is just hugely important to me. I think, I'm a huge proponent of footwear that has ankle support. Especially in mills, I would definitely recommend steel toe boots. But at a minimum, shoes with good traction, with good sole, and ankle support is going to help you maybe more than any other item on this list. Well, no, your people cleaning up messes and not allowing those messes will be number one, but the footwear would be number two. It's huge. And it's just got to keep them clean in a good condition and wear something that has a good sole to it, and have an understanding of, once you get to a certain point, you got to replace those. And a lot of you guys have where they have an allotment or an allowance for shoes every year. Take a look at what you're getting or who you're buying it from, and take a look, see if what you've got is going to actually keep your people safe. Look at what kind of traction you need, sole, what you need. Take a look at whether you want ankle support. Take a look at whether you want steel toe or you don't, whether you think it's a hazard. So, we're trying to prevent all this, and we've got the old school thing of, pay attention to your surroundings and look where you're going. Okay, well, those are viable things, but I can't guarantee, or I can't ensure that somebody's going to be paying attention to their surroundings. So we want to try to make it as foolproof as we can. Definitely no texting, reading emails while you're walking. Make sure you're looking where you're going. Never step anywhere that you guys haven't been first. So, we got training topics here. People need to understand when you transition from one type of surface to another, you're going from asphalt into the mill. Take a second to transition, not only just for the surface, but also for the sunlight. The lighting's going to change, and you will for a second or three, you're not going to be able to see anything. So teach them to step in, stop, acclimate, look what their surroundings are like, and then go. When you're on wet or slippery things, people need to know to adjust their stride and their pace. Do the penguin walk when they think it's really slippery. And then the mats inside the doors, I'm a huge fan of, even though I showed a picture of one that was flipped up, because we need to get people's shoes dried off if they're coming from outdoors or from one environment to a dry one. Because we'll have a lot of kind of baby slips with those wet shoes coming in from the outdoors. We got to keep the area clean, good housekeeping, but really we got to get people willing to fix these if they're able to do so safely. We got to talk to our equipment operators about climbing in and out of the cab and people need to be willing or need to feel comfortable reporting those hazards. So we got all this training on how to prevent them. Okay, what should you do? You've heard all this stuff that you've heard before. Well, do an assessment. Take a look at what your hazards really are. Go through, and you can use one of those audit checklists that I attached with this. And I'm a huge fan of the walkways. That way you can make sure they're flat, you can make sure they're in safe areas, and put tape or paint down to indicate where those are at. Make sure your folks got proper footwear. The create traction, those would be the mats to come in so people get their feet dried off. It could be, traction tape on stairs that are slippery. It could be a bunch of different things, but take a look at those. You'll have steps on equipment that are just worn out and they are completely perfectly smooth. So we may have steps or even ladders that we need to create some traction on. Make sure people understand, keep it clean, keep it clear, and empower your people. And you can start with your safety committee, you can start with managers, you can start wherever you want. But have your people understand that the expectation is that we need them to fix things when they find them, or the very minimum, block off the temporary hazards so it's not going to, somebody's going to blindly walk along and get hurt. We all should have a spill response plan. That what do we do if we, have 25 gallons of diesel get spilled somewhere, or a couple quarts of oil? We should have some sort of spill response plan. And that just may mean a bunch of sorbent pads and some socks to keep things from spreading. But we should have a plan on that. And the plan should be that we clean up those spills as soon as humanly possible. And I will see a lot of that in the outdoors. And we'll have something that just puked a whole bunch of oil, and we'll let that oil sit there for 3, 4, 5 days. Put the sorbent on it. Give it a little bit of time to soak it up, and then clean that up and get it out of there. Because that, we may not have a hazard from the oil making people slip, but you absolutely could have a hazard now from that sorbent sitting there for 4 days and people tripping over it or slipping on the sorbent. Got to have plan B ready for weather changes. Have your sand or your ice melt near doorways or pathways or walkways that are a problem. Have your people, whether it's maintenance or managers, or maybe it's all employees, that when we have rain or freezing rain or snow or ice, that the expectation is that somebody sands or that everybody goes sand the walkways or sand the steps or clean that snow off. Put up signs, remind people. There's nothing wrong with propaganda. Remind everybody of the hazards, but also remind them of how we're going to do it. And then with the correct PPE, in addition to the footwear, really look at what your fall protection is, your harnesses and your lanyards and your anchor points. That stuff's only good for so long. With nylon stuff, you got like 5 years, and then that thing is aged out and you need to get new equipment. The ladders, we're required to inspect them monthly. Scaffolding as well has changed in that you can't set up scaffolding and have it missing any pieces. There are regulations on what the planks look like. There's regulations on how much they have to hang over. There's regulations on putting the braces, and there's regulations about putting one type of scaffolding with another. And so if you've got scaffolding questions, I have another training just on scaffolding, or I can come do it at your job site. But if you have got scaffolding questions, let me know, because the standard has changed on that pretty significantly. But really, we got to train our people to recognize and correct hazards. Either fix it, block it off, or just report it immediately. And then take a honest look at the lighting. I did say it was a factor in almost all of the slips and falls that we've seen in our industry. It's likely a factor too, but that's part of the equation, because it's going to take all of these things. It's going to take doing all of these things so we understand where they're at and we have a plan about how to deal with it. And then just some final thoughts. I wanted to remind people of the office thing again. Very common that I'll have big company and their office people, there's 5 or 10 or 15 of them, have just as many slips and trips as their production crew of 100. So offices are dangerous too. A lot of times it's extension cords, telephone cords, people opening up file cabinets and leaving them open. I'll probably have about 10 to 15 injuries over a calendar year just from that. And then, you know, the rugs and mats, they're going to get flipped up, they're going to get flipped over. And it's just a matter that we've got to have people helping us. They can't just be walking by and ignoring it because it wasn't their mess or they didn't make the problem. So here's my contact information. My email's there. So if you're an account, sorry, I have to keep saying that because we have people that watch these on YouTube that they don't have any relationship with TPM wanting me to send them free stuff. But if you're an account, there's my email. I'll send you any copies of this that you want. You can call me and have me come on site and do training, whether it's the fall protection or it's scaffolding or even the ladder stuff, or just general slip, trip, and fall. I've been doing a decent amount of training for the safety committees. And that's where a lot of folks are starting with kind of changing that culture that their safety committee members, they're expected daily to go look for certain things and fix them when they find them. You know, I can come and train your safety committee members as well. There's my cell phone. That is my cell phone. If you call me, I'll eventually get back to you. I might be on the phone with somebody else when you do call, but if you call me and leave me a message, I'll get back in touch. And just, yeah, I'll give you guys a couple minutes to grab the materials off of that materials tab. Otherwise, just email me at that email address and I can send you the presentation, the audit paperwork, and then just some general information stuff. But that's going to do it. That is the